Welcome to everybody in all of the regions that it's going to. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Daniel Joubert. For those of you that don't know me, I am InnoRange's digital content creator. I've also in the past been in technical support, training, marketing, and international markets. Very excited today to present the Integriti version 23 release webinar. This product is being released today. So very excited to present this to you guys, all of the new features included in the V23. This is the first release of the year, so the first major release. There will be a couple of additional releases throughout this year, but this is the first release of the year. Now, the time slot of this webinar is 8:30 in the morning here in Australia. So early start for us, but it is to accommodate obviously our international markets, the US, Canada, Middle East, and the UK, as well as India. We've got participants from all over the world today, so welcome everybody. I'm going to jump straight into it and have a look at what's going to be covered today. So in this webinar, we are looking at a number of features that are new to the product. So in this version, the addition of some new integrations, so Azure user AD synchronization, as well as Duo operator two-factor authentication. We've also made some significant improvements to the way that both integrators and operators troubleshoot the system, identify issues, with some significant system health changes. These include things like an update to warnings, recent system change logs, the performance monitor that's had additional improvements in this version, as well as bundling some firmware now in our product. And the last thing I'm going to touch on today is language support for our export markets. So without any, I'm going to jump straight into the product now, and we'll have a look at the first thing, which is the Azure AD user synchronization. So let me just jump across to my screen. This is going to be a live demonstration today. A bit of housekeeping today, guys. This session is being recorded. So if you do have any questions, if you have any questions throughout the session as well, we do also have chat. We have a moderator. Rusty's moderating the chat today. So if you guys want to reach out to him with a question, the chat is private. So no one else is going to see the message. It's just going to be Rusty that sees it. He may answer the chat for you live, or he may wait for the end of the session for me to demonstrate the answer or to answer the question live. But if you want to, shoot a message to Rusty if you have any questions. I'm just going to pop up my screen. All right, so the first thing we're going to be looking at is the Azure AD integration. So we've supported Active Directory for a while now with Integriti. This is the on-premise Active Directory. And that basically provides us a mechanism to synchronize users, to modify users, update users, and delete users from Active Directory. So it provides a single source of truth in a system. So often larger systems will have Active Directory deployments where every user that is interacting with the system will exist in Active Directory, rather than that being entered twice in the administration overheads of entering user data twice. We basically synchronize to Active Directory, and that becomes the single source of truth. Now, Active Directory and Azure AD are different. Azure AD is Microsoft's cloud-based Active Directory system. So they are pushing towards, obviously, cloud with everything they're doing at the moment with Office 365, OneDrive, SharePoint. Everything's moving to a cloud-based deployment. And a lot of our customers are moving in that direction as well, to a Azure AD integration, to Azure AD deployment. So I'm going to have a look at this, going to demonstrate it to you live. Just take note at the moment, I currently have my users on screen here where I have just 2 users in my system. These are manually created users. They're just here to show you that, yes, you can do a combination of AD synchronization as well as manual users. So these may be users that don't exist in AD. It might be a contractor that's coming on site or a visitor that doesn't have an AD user. So we can support both manual and AD synchronization. So 2 users at the moment. The Azure AD user sync is done through our integrations tab under integrated systems. So in here, I have a pre-created integration configured. It's currently offline. I just don't want it to automatically sync yet. I'll get it to do that later on in the demonstration. So if I open this up, I'm just going to run through some of the settings in this window, which are important and good to understand. So in the connection settings, obviously what you'd expect, login name, password, and just selecting which tenancy we're going to be synchronizing with in Azure AD. The next set of settings is the import sync settings. So this is broken into two sections. This is the full sync and the partial sync. Now we have two of these for a reason. The full sync, when the full sync occurs, it's basically pulling everything from the Azure AD. So if I had 100,000 users, it's going to pull 100,000 users, changes and updates down to my system. And that's quite intensive operation for Integriti, the network connection, as well as Azure AD. So we do synchronize that for a certain time, and we do have a frequency. So once per day, for example, twice per day, or once per hour. You wouldn't be running this every 5 minutes, for example, with 100,000 users. So my synchronization time is 12 a.m. And my partial sync frequency, which is just looking to synchronize the changes in users that already exist. So this is a user that has already been synchronized previously. I've updated the user, I've canceled their account, I've added a new field. It's going to update those users for me. You can see I've specified a very short time. That's just for the purpose of demonstrating this in the system. So, so when I make a change, it appears immediately. That's probably not a recommended time to have that set to. Next up, we have the import settings. So I have flagged this option here to generate review on import. And the reason for this is so that I can see the results of the import. I can see the connections being established to Azure AD. And then when the import occurs, I'll get a message saying this many entities have been updated, or nothing's been updated. Additionally, I've got the option to specify the Azure AD groups. So each user in Azure AD belongs to one or more groups. That's basically, this allows us to filter what type of users we're synchronizing. We may not want to synchronize every single user group or AD group down to our system. So this allows me to basically select them. And the way this works is when you first set up the integration, it connects to Azure AD and it requests these names from Azure AD, and it basically grabs the names from Azure AD and populates this list. And from here, you just simply click the groups you'd like to synchronize or filter on. The next step is the entity import mapping. This here basically allows us to take properties in Integriti and map it directly to certain attributes within Azure AD. So by default, you're going to get the first three, the Azure user ID, the first name, and the second name coming across to Integriti. So those are the default fields. The ID is the unique identifier within Active Directory. That just means that it's what we use to key on the user to determine whether it's a new user or a duplicate or the same user, so we don't create duplicates in our system. Obviously, given name and surname is self-explanatory. I also have a couple of additional mapping things in here. So not only can we create the user with first and last name, we can also create the user and assign a card, permissions, as well as even canceling the user if required. So in the card section, just to give some context here, I've got my card type set to constant value. This is just basically saying that every user I import that's got a card is going to be a particular type of card. In this case, I've just set it to Cipher site code. What's important now is this field here, which is card number in Integriti. I'm mapping that to employee ID in Azure AD. So the field called employee ID, any number I type into that field will come across as the actual card number. So for example, if I type in 12345, a user will be created with the card number 12345, and it's going to be a Cipher credential in this case. I know there's a lot on screen here, guys, but bear with me. The permission side of things, here I am mapping the what permission. I'm mapping their Azure AD department attribute, and I'm mapping that to their permissions or their extra permissions. Now, the way this works is I'm using a name lookup, which basically means that we connect to Azure AD, we ask Azure AD to provide all of the different departments, department names that are properties of a user. They come down and we create a permission group for those properties, for those department names. So anytime a user is created and a new department is assigned to that user, we'll create a new permission group within Integrity as well. So this configuration basically allows me to create a user, assign a card, assign a credential, and very lastly here, the user cancelled. I've tied our user cancelled in Integrity, which would revoke a person's access to the access control and intrusion system. I've mapped that to account enabled in Azure AD. So if somebody was to leave a company and IT was revoking their Azure AD access, it would also revoke their access control access as well. I'll show you how that works live with a user. So I'm not going to start this quite yet. I'm just going to jump across to my users. So you can see here in my users, currently only have 2 users. And I'm also going to open my permission groups. And I'm just going to just dock it to the side here. So my permission groups at the moment, you can see I've got a couple. I'm just going to actually remove a couple of these. A couple of pre-programmed permission groups. So when I activate this or when I enable this integration to Azure AD, just keep an eye on the number of users that increase and the number of permission groups that increase as well. So I'm just going to shoot back here and open up this integration. And from there, I'm just going to set it. I'm going to enable this integration and click save. And pretty quickly, we should see a change there. I can see some review down the bottom here come up, saying the connection has been started. And there we have a number of users automatically created. Additionally, you'll see the permission groups have also been created. We've got permission groups like marketing, R&D, sales, engineering. These have been drawn from the department mapping to Azure AD. So let's have a look at one of these users. Let's have a look at Adele Vance. So we've got first and last name came through. We've used their employee ID as an identifier for the card assignment. So I've assigned card 10501 to Adele. Additionally, she belongs to the retail department, and because of that, she's been assigned the retail permission group. One thing to note, that permission group that's been assigned, it's been created, but it doesn't contain anything at this point. You would still need to go in and create the permissions, assign the doors, assign the areas, assign the lifts, for example, or the elevators, based on this user's requirements. But once that's done for the first time, then anybody that gets automatically assigned this retail permission group will also gain those permissions. The last thing I want to show you, I'm just going to jump across to Azure AD. So in Azure AD, I have the user Adele Vance that we just looked at before here as well. I'm just going to open her up, and I have her account status here is enabled. Let's say, for example, she's leaving the company. I need to disable this user through Active Directory. If I edit her status, I've got the option here for account enabled. I can flag that, and that will disable her account in Azure AD. I'm just going to click save there, and you can see now she is disabled, or her account is disabled. If we head back to Integrity, you can see down the bottom here, this is the review from the last import, that the import completed and that a total of 15 entities were imported, and there were 0 failed imports. We just got to give it a couple of seconds just so that partial sync time clicks over and that it updates the user. So that should happen anytime now. You can see that now in the user for Adele Vance, that her user is now cancelled. So now her permissions, her access through Azure AD and to any of the IT infrastructure has been revoked, as well as her permissions to the physical access control system. We've revoked that automatically now in a single click in Azure AD. She's still there. We can still do reports on her. We can still see where she's gone. We can see what she's been doing, what doors she's accessed, but she doesn't have any access to our system anymore. And we can see there the last import review message indicates that a total of 1 entities were processed and 1 entity is imported. So again, that is the Azure AD integration. This integration is available on both the business and corporate editions of Integriti, the same as the AD integration. So all you need is version 23 and the business or corporate editions, and you can run this integration. As I mentioned before, this integration really streamlines the onboarding of users, dramatically reduces the times for user creation, user modification, and editing by automating the entire process. You may still need to create users manually, and that's still a possibility. You can still create users and that are not Active Directory users, such as contractors. So that's the Azure AD. The next integration we're going to be looking at is the Duo two-factor authentication. I'm just going to get my phone ready for this because I'll be using my phone to demonstrate. So Duo two-factor authentication is new in version 23. What this does is basically provides or two-factor authentication requires an operator logging into Integriti to provide more credentials than just their username and password. Obviously, a username and password can be jeopardized or by somebody memorizing the password or by operators sharing the password between each other for a single login. So what two-factor authentication does is it requires the operator to confirm their login on a device like a personal device or a work device, something like a mobile phone. I'm going to show you the configuration, and I'll show you the login using two-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication is selected here under System Settings in our software, and the two-factor authentication. You can see I've already got mine configured for Duo Authenticator. We also support Microsoft and Google, and also one-time password authentication. Duo is just the adoption of another industry standard product for us. Common things we have there, the API key, the integration key, and the host name. This is basically just the connection settings to connect to our specific Duo system. Once you've configured that in the system settings, everything else is done from the operator. The enrollment and the assignment is all done through the operator itself. So if I head across to the administration tab and have a look at my operators, I have an operator here called Daniel, and I'm going to be enrolling them directly from this window. So you can see down the bottom here, there's a section for two-factor authentication, and currently the 2FA status is not enrolled. So I'm going to be enrolling this this user. I'm just going to also bring up my phone here on the side so you can see exactly what's happening. So the enrollment process, if I click on the enroll button, if I click on the enroll button, I get two options. I get the option to enroll by sending a code or the option to enroll via a QR code. If I was sitting with the operator right next to me here, they could simply scan the QR code based on the device they're using. So for example, if they had an Android device, they would scan the QR code, it would give them a prompt, and they would complete the setup. I'm going to go for the option of phone number because it allows me to send an SMS with a link. So the operator doesn't have to be local. They don't have to scan the QR code. So I'm just going to enter my mobile number here. And I'm going to click send SMS. And we can see here we've got a message from Duo in my system here. It's a message saying to activate the app, click and open this link. So I'm just going to click on that link. If I didn't have Duo installed, it would prompt me to install Duo. But now I'm going through the setup process since I already have it installed. I get to name the account. In this case, I'm just going to call it Integriti. And click save at this point in time. You may notice I've got two accounts in here. It's because we use Duo for other authentication purposes as well. Now to finish the process, I've sent it, they've done, the operator's done what they needed to do on their end. The next step of the enrollment is to click OK here. And that will send another request to the user to verify it as well. So in this case, it opens up, it's just verifying that this is actually the user, and it's just making sure that we have got this working correctly. Hit approve on that. Integriti communicates with the Duo server, and the operator has been successfully enrolled. So we can see here that two-factor authentication status is enrolled. I'm now enrolled with a Duo two-factor. Now, the way this works is if I minimize this and I log into my application, so I'm just going to log into Gatekeeper. Bear with me a second. So I'm going to log in as Daniel. Okay, I'm just going to log in. And if we have a look at the mobile phone here on the right-hand side, it's now telling me it's got a login request. So Integriti will not proceed until this request is acknowledged or approved. So if I click approve now, you will see that Integriti now continues the login process completes. I get access to the software. And you can see by the appearance it is different. I am logged in as Daniel now. So that's two-factor authentication using Duo. Again, the purpose of two-factor authentication is to improve cybersecurity. It requires an operator to use more than a username and password. It requires them to provide an additional credential, whether it's in the case of Duo, a confirmation, or whether it's in the case of Microsoft or Google Authenticator, it could just be a password or a one-time password. So that is the Integriti integration with Duo two-factor authentication. The next thing we're going to be looking at is the integration, is some of the system health improvements. So the system health improvements we have in Integriti version 23, we focused a lot on improvements to help troubleshoot the system, help identify issues, and to help with preventing issues in the system for both the integrator and for the regular operators. So the first thing we're going to look at is system warnings. So I'm going to start off by just opening up my system warnings. Which I can't see from the bottom of the screen. There we go, the system warnings. So the system warnings have had a complete redesign visually. They have a dashboard style layout now. For those of you that aren't familiar with system warnings have a look at the overall health of the system, and they basically bring up issues to the operator that relate to things like server issues, storage issues, hardware issues. These aren't event-based. They're not about, say, for example, a duress event occurring. Our alert system takes care of event-based alarms. These are system-based alarm events. These are system-based conditions that are covered by the system warnings. So I'm just going to create a couple of system warnings quickly. I just have a script that's going to create a very large file on my desktop, which is going to fill up my hard drive. I've just done that in the background. And the other thing I'm going to do is just navigate to my users, and I'm just going to create a system warning by assigning too many cards to a user. So I'm going to enter a number here. I'm going to enter another card number for this user. I'm going to exceed the total number of cards that can be assigned to a user with Integriti. So I've got a system warning there. So we can see now this window's changed significantly. Before it was green. Green is good, everything's okay. That's the ideal status we want our system warnings to be in. Now I've got some warnings that are in orange, and I've got a bit more information being displayed here. So system warnings are broken into three categories: the hardware category, the integration category, and the system health category. Of those categories, we have 9 different types of warnings. These relate to servers being offline, to review database issues, or even things like hardware, like certain issues with syncing data to a controller, for example, as well as integration data sync errors as well. In the coming releases, this list will be expanded significantly as we flesh out more warnings that are valuable to display. So this list will increase over time. As well as the 3 categories, we also display the system warnings based on their priority or how critical they are to the system. My 2 warnings at this point in time, or my 3 warnings, sorry, are all medium priority, but I could create a high priority or a low priority as well. With any of these ones, these system warnings, the primary improvement that we've made here is obviously making it easy to identify what's a priority, making it easy to identify that there is a system warning, and also how to resolve the system warning, so how to deal with it. So if I click on this hardware system warning, the controller data sync error, I can see here some information about it, when it was created, and some of some details about this warning. We can see here that one card does not fit in the controller, and the resolution is provided here as well. Reduce the number of items associated with Daniel. Not only that, if possible with our warning, we also give you a link to be able to resolve it. In this case, if I click Edit Daniel, that's going to bring up my user. I can see I've got too many cards here, so I'm going to strip away a card that's not required, and I'm going to save that. If I return to my system warnings, might just take a second to resolve, you can see that the system warnings are self-healing. I don't have to do anything to make it disappear. It doesn't require me to finalize it. I don't need to delete it. I simply need to restore it to the good state, and it will disappear from my system warning window. The other 2 system warnings I have here are about drive capacity. And because my Integriti server is installed on my PC and my SQL database is installed on this laptop, I've got system warnings about both the system, or the OS, as well as the SQL drive, both relating to the same hard drive, obviously. So in this case, there is a scenario that I can't resolve the issue immediately as an operator, and I may need to suppress an issue. So something like drive capacity, I might need to escalate that to IT and tell them that they need to provide additional resources to the machine or a larger drive. So it's not something I can simply resolve by immediately. So in that case, I may want to suppress this warning. So what I can do is I can select the warning, and I can right click on it, and I can click suppress, or I can click this little icon just there. I can suppress that warning. It gives me some options to suppress it till tomorrow, till next week, next month, or next year. Let's say I've logged a ticket with IT about this. I'm just going to suppress it till next week and click OK. You can see it drops off the list. I still have a mention of the fact that there's one suppressed warning in this box here. And I can do the same with this as well. I can suppress that warning till next week. In this case, I'm back to all green. Everything's good. I do have 2 suppressed warnings. If another operator was to open up this dialog window after me to have a look at these suppressed warnings, clicking the show suppressed option, I can see here that those warnings are still there. They're not colored. They're not in orange anymore. They just appear in gray because they are suppressed, but they are still available for any operator to see. Additionally, I can also remove the suppression and restore it to resolve, to bring it back as a current warning. So in the scenario that IT finally resolve the issue, they provide additional resources, increase the drive capacity, it will automatically resolve. I'm just going to do this by removing the file from my system and freeing up some space on my hard drive. And that should resolve these 2 issues. Again, they're auto-healing. I could delete it if I want to with the delete button, but these will auto-heal and they will be removed from my system. It may not happen immediately. This is a background process. It's not the same as alerts, which is immediate and live and happen the second the event occurs. This is a background task that's running. It's fairly a low priority task because it's catching, it's not dealing with thousands of critical events. It's really showing just system health overall. Not sure when that will disappear, but that should disappear at some point. I'll just talk about what we're going to be looking at next. So the next item on the list in our version 23 release is the system change log, which I'm going to be showing you. I'll come back to this window, guys. Let me shoot across to the system changelog. This again is an administration. All of these features and everything I'm showing you today is in System Designer. These troubleshooting features are not going to be displayed in Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper is really about presenting, and interacting with the system. It's about showing cameras, showing maps, and the day-to-day interaction with the system. So the recent system changes, if I just open that up, recent system changes is a new feature in version 23. It allows me to show any changes that have occurred in a period of time. This is not the same as audit. So audit is changes that are programmatic changes that occur to certain items. For example, if I have a user and I make programming changes, that's all logged into an audit so that I can revert those changes or see what was previously programmed. The system log is slightly different. I'm just going to expand this to a large time selection and hit the go button here. And as you can see, I'll just collapse these. It shows me everything that's in my system that's changed that relates to really the underlying pieces of my system. So what versions of plugins do I have installed? What versions of .NET do I have installed? What's the operating system on the server? And what's the operating system on the workstations? So these categories basically allow me to troubleshoot the system better. So if I have a report that something's not working, something's was working previously and now isn't, this is one of the first places I'd look at. Maybe the plugin version's been changed. Maybe IT's updated the operating system for a client. Maybe there's been an automatic update to the .NET version that may have caused an issue. This is the first place I would look at. So having a look at here at each section, the installed plugin versions, you can see here's a good example, Azure AD. It has a previous version, so I've got a version 1.0.0, 4300, and recently I've changed that to a version that ends in 4346. So this indicates to me that there has been a change or an update, and it may be a possible reason for a difference in the way something is working. The .NET version, .NET is basically the underlying structure that we use to develop the platform and the Integriti platform. So the .NET version is very important. We've got 4 versions here for each of the application servers, or so each of the servers on my server here. The server OS version, you can see that I'm running Windows 10 Pro. Additionally, the workstation.NET version, you can see that I am on my workstation, I'm running 4.8.0, which is the same as my server workstation version. And very lastly, you can see that my workstation OS is the same as Windows 10 Pro. So I could see here if somebody upgraded to Windows 11, you would see the old version was Windows 10, the new version is Windows 11. Additionally, based on these changes and in this view, I can also print this. So I can hit the print export button. That'll provide me a printout. I can then use this. I could export it to one of these file formats. I could email it. I could send it as an attachment. It just allows me to report on this and take it externally out of the system. Again, this is very useful for somebody troubleshooting the system. If something was working previously but now is not, this is the first place you should come to see what has changed. Is it something that IT's pushed down to workstations? Is it something that another integrator has updated? Is it a recent change you've made that could have caused the issue? So again, working with technical support or just troubleshooting the system gives you a lot more visibility of recent changes. Just give me a second. The next feature we're going to be looking at is the performance monitor. I just noticed there in the background, guys, those warnings have restored. So they have self-healed, the drive space was freed up, and Integriti is now happy that there's enough drive space for the application to run properly. So the next one we're looking at is the performance monitor. So performance monitor was added in version at the end of the year in version 22.2. It's had some significant updates. The reason I'm including it is because not a lot of people know about this, and it fits really well in the system health changes that have occurred in Integriti System Designer. So what the performance monitor does is it basically gives us, it takes snapshots of the system over time and provides us with information that relates to 3 metrics: how much CPU we're using, how much RAM we're using, and the number of review events per hour, so how much review we're generating. Each of those metrics, we can filter down further. We can say, I need to know how much the application server is using, how much the controller server is using, or how much the integration server is using. So for example, if I select the application server here, we can see the CPU usage. The blue line is the total CPU usage. This is how much my PC is using. I've obviously had some spikes here right into 90% and right above 60%. These don't relate to Integriti. This is something else that's happened on my computer. It may have been something like a background task running, an antivirus scan, or something else that's pushed that up. So that's just background events. What's important here is comparing those spikes to the load that's generated by Integriti, which is the red line down the bottom here. Because I'm a demo system, I'm barely generating any review. I'm not really doing much with my system. I'm pretty much using almost zero CPU usage there. Same for RAM. My RAM is sitting at about 45 to 60% usage at any time. And again, not much is being used by by the application server over this time. And lastly, the last metric is review per hour. So this is interesting in it gives us the blue line at the top. Those spikes tell us the total number of review events generated, and the red line indicate how much is being generated by the application server. If I change it to the controller server, you can see that the controller is generating significantly less review than the application server. Or if I change it to the integration server, I'm hardly generating any review on the integration server. So where this is useful is in troubleshooting a system where there's been reports of things going slow, for example, or not working as well as they used to. This gives us an insight to be able to say, well, the CPU is constantly hitting 100%. And yes, it could be our application that is pushing the resources on that PC. Maybe we need to look at providing additional resources or replacing this machine now with a better machine to ensure that the system's running well. Just like the system change log, I can print this information, I can export this information. It exports as these snapshots where it provides me that information relating to each of those metrics and even things like the review per hour and the total review as well. So that is the performance monitor. Additionally, if I wanted to, here I could filter on certain things as well. I could filter on CPU usage above 50%, for example, or CPU usage above 90%. And I could see how often that occurs over a week, over a day, over a month. So again, it's going to give me a lot of insight into how my system is functioning and whether I have appropriate resources for the amount of review I'm generating and the amount of CPU I'm using and the amount of RAM I'm using. Additionally, as well, if the server wasn't just dedicated to us, it would also indicate that maybe another application on the server is using too much resources and we should go for a standalone server for Integriti. Moving along from that, guys, the next feature with Integriti version 23 is bundled firmware. So if I shoot over to the hardware tab here and I have a look at the firmware update dialog window, what we've done is we've now, with every version of 23 installed, we bundle the most recent version of firmware or the recommended version of firmware with this installation, which means that rather than installing the product and having to go to the website, download the firmware for each module type that you have, just opening this will provide the most recent firmware. As you update the product in the future, we go to version 23.1. If anything has changed, it'll include those files. So it'll be the most recent files, the most recent firmware versions based on the release date. The firmware update process is still exactly the same. I still have to select the firmware and the module. and have to update, have to push that update down to those modules. The website obviously is still going to hold firmware files. You can still go to the website if you prefer that method to download files. You can go there again in between releases. You might want to go to the website just to confirm that it's the latest version. So in this case, if I was to select the controller, hit the controller, update the selected module, it'll push out that to that version to the controller. At the time of release, you will have the most recent versions of all the firmware. The last feature I want to show you guys, which is the translation feature. The translations to support our global markets, we've always supported translations. In Europe, we have a lot of translations to different languages. We've just completed a translation to Canadian French for that market. But as we push into other export markets, things like the Middle East, we need to be able to support languages that aren't left to right, but actually are right to left based languages. So if I log out of Integriti quickly, I'll just show you what we've done. So you can see here I have the login screen. You'll notice up the top there's something different here. At the moment, my language is set to English United States. That's based on my operating system. I also have the ability here to select other languages. So if I select Arabic here, that window will disappear for a second, and you can see that when it comes back, everything is justified to the right. It's not changed any words. They're still all in English, as you can see. This is not the translation. This is just the mechanism to allow support for right to left based languages. The translations will come in time to different languages. So if I log in as well, you can see that change not only propagates on the login window, but every single window we're looking at. We now even support the translation of integrations. So you can see here the entire user interface is now right to left justified for text. Everything is mirrored compared to a normal English system. So again, this is going to be vital for the product to go into markets where languages are Arabic languages for the Middle East, for example. So that is the last feature for version 23, the translation support. So again, guys, just in summary, the version 23, we've really focused on additional integrations. We've focused on simplifying user creation. We've focused on improving cybersecurity with supporting Duo two-factor authentication. We've put a lot of effort into identifying issues, resolving issues, and troubleshooting issues with some system changes, system health warning changes there. And very lastly, the support for translations to languages that are right to left justified. I'm just going to log out of this, just so if there's any questions and I need to demonstrate anything, I can do that. Just bear with me a second. I'll just log back in. Okay. I'm just going to have a look at the chat now, guys. I'm sure Rusty's got some questions here. So we're moving on to the last part of the webinar, just any questions. So let me just open this up. Let's have a look at I'll have a look at some questions here. So I understand Rusty might have replied to you guys direct. So I've got a couple of questions here. Firstly, is this session being recorded? Yes, it is. You can view this session afterwards. You'll be sent a follow-up email with a recording and a link, so you can view this at any time. So another question here: is there a method to have is there a method to have sync of a user termination happen immediately instead of scheduled sync time? So I think maybe that question was asked a bit quickly. So in my demonstration, I showed you that the sync time, we do need to set a partial sync time. We do need to have some uh, uh, sync time schedule there. So in that case, it could be as low as 30 seconds. It could be every 5 minutes, for example. But you do need to schedule a sync time, the partial sync time, to revoke a user's access. So it doesn't just revoke; it has to actually communicate. It has to go through basically checking with Azure AD to confirm what users have been changed. So even though it's not pulling every user through, it still has to confirm which users have been changed. So there is always going to be a partial sync frequency. What do we have here? Some additional questions. Bear with me here. Any points to take for upgrading from version 21 to version 23? No, that update process should be fairly easy. The version 21 would require a version upgrade license. If you purchase version 21 new, you'd probably have licensing for version 21 and version 22, which would mean you would most likely need to purchase an upgrade license. You can either contact your distributor or an in-range sales to find out more information about that. Let me see if there's any other questions here that are. When will version 23 documentation be available? And so when will version 23 be available for download? So you should see it up on the website by this afternoon, everything going well. It is ready for release. We are just pulling the trigger and pushing it up onto the website. So this is a version 23 release webinar. It will be out today, hopefully. It is ready to go. It's just a matter of getting it on the website now. I think that's basically it. Unless there's any other questions, I'd like to thank Rusty for moderating the chat and sifting through these to find some questions. And to everybody that's joined, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your time.